What if Anakin never turned to the dark side? In Revenge of the Sith, we saw Anakin slice off Mace Windu's arm, join Palpatine, and become Darth Vader. But what if none of this ever happened? Well, in this alternate timeline, that's exactly what we'll be diving into, so let's get right into it. After hearing the news that Obi-Wan has engaged General Grievous, Anakin went to Palpatine's office to speak with him. However, during his time with the Chancellor, he learns a terrifying truth that he was the Sith Lord they had been searching for this whole time. Instead of making a rash decision here, he goes and tells Windu about what he just learned, and Windu orders him to go wait in the council chambers until he returns. Anakin listened. However, this is when our story is different from the original. As Anakin waited in the council chambers, he couldn't help but feel uneasy about the situation. Sitting there, he sensed the battle with Palpatine unfold, and as the minutes passed, he felt that Padme's chance of survival was getting slimmer and slimmer by the minute. He knew that in order for Padme to live, Palpatine had to survive. So he made a rash decision and quickly traveled to the Chancellor's office, but as soon as he walked in the room, he was horrified. It was right there and then where he witnessed Windu's purple lightsaber being pointed right at the very throat of the key to his wife's survival, Palpatine. As Anakin then spoke with Windu, he begged him to let Palpatine live, but Windu refused. What Windu was facing here was doubt in himself. For so long, deep in the back of his mind, he always saw himself as the chosen one because he was able to master his anger and his emotions, but here, right before him, was the one who everyone believed was the chosen one, having the audacity to tell him not to bring balance and to not destroy the Sith. In this moment of hesitation, his judgment clouded by pride, Windu swung his lightsaber ready to strike down Palpatine, but then all of a sudden, Anakin used all of his power to force push Windu back. As Windu stood there stunned, Anakin told him that it's not the Jedi way to kill an unarmed man, and he knows that because he made that same mistake earlier by killing Count Dooku. He regretted his choice to kill Dooku, and he wasn't about to let Windu make that same mistake, so instead, he offered one last time that they could end this together by arresting him. For the first time in years, Windu was impressed by young Skywalker's wisdom, and for a brief moment, he even told himself that maybe, just maybe, he was wrong about him. Windu then said to Anakin that he agrees, but before they had the chance to speak any further, Palpatine used both of his hands and struck the two of them with Force lightning, knocking them right to the floor. Although he was wounded, Anakin was able to pick himself back up and ignited his saber. Windu did the same. They both realized that in order to protect the Jedi Order, their only option left was in fact to kill him. As Palpatine watched them stand up, he started laughing. "Foolish Jedi," he said. He had planned for this. Years of schemes would not be for nothing, as he had his second lightsaber hidden in his sleeve ready for him this entire time. So Palpatine ignited his other saber once again, leaping into the fight, going straight for the two Jedi. It was a duel to the death, and Palpatine was gonna win no matter the cost. A battle for the future of the galaxy unfolded in the Chancellor's office. Beams of Force lightning and evil laughter reached across the skies of Coruscant. Flashes of red, purple, and blue could also be seen from the busy streets above. However, in a highly calculated move, Palpatine was able to knock Windu to the ground once again, so that now he could enter a duel with his failed apprentice. As Palpatine and Anakin clashed lightsabers, Windu then woke up from his collision with the wall, and as he looked around, he realized right there and then that he was in a battle that would not only decide the fate of just the Jedi, but the entire galaxy. As Windu watched young Skywalker fight for his life, he tried to pick himself back up to help him, but he was way too injured to fight. But then the Force reached out to him. This was why he was granted Shatterpoint. As he watched their duel, he realized a weakness in Palpatine's defense. Skywalker would need help, but not in the form of having him fighting alongside him, but in his weapon. So he then threw Anakin his lightsaber, praying to the Force that Anakin would also see the weakness. As the Chosen One watched the saber in the air, he then caught it and turned his and Windu's lightsabers on Palpatine, burying them deep into his chest, killing him immediately. Balance had been achieved in a stroke of these two lightsabers. As Palpatine collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, he whispered to Anakin, "I could have saved her." Anakin dropped to his knees. He felt numb inside as dread and fear overwhelmed him. Did I make the right decision, he asked himself? Only time would tell. As Windu walked up to Anakin, he put his hand on his shoulder and said the words, "Maybe I was wrong about you, young Skywalker." Anakin cracked a smile as he tried to hide his true feelings. Despite killing the evil Darth Sidious, he couldn't help but feel terrified for Padme's life. The next morning, Windu calls for an emergency council meeting, and every council member returns from their missions to meet back on Coruscant. In the meeting, Windu discusses with the council that Palpatine was the Sith Lord they've been looking for, and that he secretly started, controlled, and monitored the Clone Wars, all in hopes of luring Anakin to the dark side. Windu then said, part of this plan involved him revealing his secret to young Skywalker, but being true to the Jedi, Anakin brought this information to me, and I took a squad of Jedi to confront and arrest the Chancellor. The Jedi I brought who were Kit Fisto, Agent Kolar and Sazy Tin died in their efforts, and I myself believe I failed them after nearly losing myself to my darkness. But throughout all of this, the Chosen One was the one who pulled me out of it and brought balance to the Force in my own failure. As a reward for his efforts, I suggest that Anakin Skywalker should be granted the rank of Master. The rest of the council didn't hesitate. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Plo Koon, and every other council member rose from their seats to honor the new Jedi Master. They were amazed by Anakin's efforts, and most of all, he proved that the prophecy had been fulfilled. Anakin Skywalker was now the youngest Jedi Master and council member in the history of the Jedi. As the meeting then ended and everybody left, Anakin stayed in his seat. He was so confused with himself. He told himself that he's been wanting to become a Jedi Master for so long and that he should be happy about this achievement, but he couldn't help but feel empty inside. Even though he was a master, he felt that the only key to saving Padme's life was Palpatine, and now that hope was gone. Regardless, Anakin realized that if he was going to find a way to fix this, he needed to act quickly, and the only way to do that was to search the Jedi archives to see if he could find some answers. However, as he stood up from his seat, Obi-Wan entered the room. He had a concerned look on his face. He asked Anakin why he was sitting here all alone, since that was totally unlike him, especially after just receiving the biggest honor a Jedi could get. Anakin went silent. "Anakin," Obi-Wan said, "are you okay?" Anakin shook his head and told him that he hasn't been honest with him. Not for a while. It was in that very moment where Anakin realized that secrets are what nearly drove him into the arms of Sidious, and it was secrets that kept his mind from rest. So he told Obi-Wan everything. His relationship with Padme, his nightmares about losing her, and also that she was pregnant and that he was the father. But even more than that, Anakin also told Obi-Wan that he confessed all this to Palpatine, and that Palpatine told him there was a way to save her and that he would be the one to help him. Obi-Wan, with a serious look, began to smile. He told Anakin that it was pretty obvious they were together, and although he always knew, he decided to never say anything. He believed that it was never his place to tell Anakin to let go, because he knew how happy Padme made him and all he ever wanted was the best for him. But then Obi-Wan's smile faded. He took a pause. "Do you trust me, my old friend?" he said. Anakin replied, "Of course, my master." Obi-Wan then said, "Then Anakin, you need to listen to me very carefully. Padme will not die. This was all part of Palpatine's plan to manipulate you to the dark side, and what better way to do that than by making you fear the person you love most in the world. Anakin, she will be okay, and you and I will be by her side throughout it all, but you need to trust me." Anakin shed a tear and gave his master a hug, something he hadn't really ever done throughout their time together. Recently, he felt so far from Obi-Wan, but right there and then, it truly felt like they were brothers again. Now he could finally say that he felt like he made his master proud. As Anakin was walking back to Padme's apartment, he was deep in thought. Normally, his old self would have just ignored what Obi-Wan just said, but because of the events that have just occurred in the past 24 hours, he felt like a different person. He felt more connected to the Jedi than he had in his entire time in the Order, and the distrust that was rising was now a thing of the past. For the first time since his childhood, he felt free from his chains. His thoughts then came back to Padme. He thought to himself that maybe she will be okay, that things would really work out just as Obi-Wan said. After some time during the night, Anakin woke up to Padme moaning in pain, and as he felt the bed drenched, he realized that her water had just broken and the baby was coming. This was now the moment of truth, and although Anakin's emotions were conflicted, there was no time to waste. He quickly rushed her to the nearby medical center on Coruscant and contacted Obi-Wan immediately. If there was one moment where he ever needed his brother, it was now. As time passed and Padme entered the medical room, Obi-Wan joined Anakin, and as they waited for the results, he immediately could sense the unease in Anakin. He put his hand on his shoulder and said, "Breathe and trust in the Force. This is a happy moment." Anakin smiled, or at least he tried to. Then all of a sudden, the medical droid next to them interrupted them and told them that Padme wasn't carrying one baby, but instead twins. Anakin was shocked. The emotions rushed through him. Part of it was joy, part of it was fear, and part of it was just imagining the future they could have together. Then Padme started screaming. Typically, this was a normal thing, but to Anakin, this was straight out of his visions. However, before he was able to process what just happened, the first child came out. It was a boy. As Anakin and Padme looked at each other, they nodded their heads. "Luke," she said. Anakin held Luke. Then came the second child. This time, it was a girl. "Leia," Anakin said. Anakin and Padme had these names planned for months in case it was going to be a girl or a boy. But twins? Anakin was beside himself. He started to forget about his fears, and instead, he was just thrilled about this moment. He was now a father to the love of his life's children. He couldn't be happier. As Padme laid there, she smiled. "I'm okay, Annie," she said. Everything was okay. Anakin looked at Obi-Wan, and in that moment of joy, he realized that his fears were now laid to rest. His master was right. The galaxy felt at peace, and the best of all, his family was complete. As Anakin was deep in thought, he told himself that this really was all Palpatine's manipulations the whole time. He realized that Palpatine must have been so strong in the Force that he could influence these nightmares for him to be terrified. Anakin thought to himself how terrible the Sith were, that they used their selfishness and greed to manipulate others, all for greater power. In a way, he felt disgusted inside. Regardless of this, now he had a son to raise and teach, and a daughter to dote on and love endlessly. Now that all this was over, Padme was safe, the children were safe. Now they can live the life they always dreamed of, if the council let them. As Anakin and Obi-Wan stood outside for a bit, Obi-Wan told him that there's one thing left, and that's to come clean to the Jedi Council and to tell them that Padme had given birth to 2 children, he was the father, and that they were married. Anakin understood, but right now, that would have to wait, since his wife needed him by her side more than ever. The next morning, Anakin requested a meeting with the council so that he could tell them everything. He told them about their relationship, about Luke and Leia, but most importantly, about how much Padme means to him. He explained to the council that for years the Jedi Code said to forbid attachments, but he's discovered that Padme has only ever made him a better Jedi. He mentioned how she's been nothing but supportive throughout his years as a Jedi and that she has always wanted the best for him. Anakin then looked Yoda in the eyes and asked him if he can keep his relationship while still remaining a Jedi Master. Yoda sighed, but before he had the chance to even speak, Windu stepped in. He looked at Anakin and told him that by allowing him to remain a master while in a relationship, that would break the Jedi Code that has lasted thousands of years and that it would go completely against what they stood for. Anakin understood, but Windu wasn't finished speaking. He then said that maybe because of the rules they have in place, that's why they were never able to see Palpatine for who he truly was the whole time. That's why they were manipulated for so long and were so blinded and clouded by the dark side as their ego and pride kept their eyes shut to the truth. Windu then looked at Yoda and said, "I request that Skywalker is to stay as the Jedi Master with his wife, Senator Amidala. He saved me, now I believe it is on me to return that favor." Yoda nodded and said, "In agreement, I am." The rest of the council agreed. Anakin was to stay. Later that evening, Anakin received a call coming from his comlink. It was Ahsoka. She had just arrived on Coruscant after defeating and capturing Maul. Anakin was so impressed that she was able to defeat him, and so he met with her and the two then spoke for hours. Throughout their talk, Anakin told her everything about Palpatine, about Padme, and also that the council allowed him to stay. When Ahsoka heard this, she was shocked. The news was one thing, but she was also surprised because she's never seen Anakin so happy before. After hearing all this, Ahsoka started to rethink her decision about leaving the Jedi a few years back. Maybe the Jedi have changed their ways. Maybe this was the Jedi Order she fell in love with when she was just a child. She was so impressed with the fact that the council allowed Anakin to stay as a master, as this was something so unlike the Jedi over the past few years. She thought to herself, maybe they found their old ways again. But right now, that didn't matter as much. Ahsoka couldn't restrain herself. She needed to see the two Skywalker twins, and so Anakin and her headed straight to Padme's apartment. As Ahsoka laid eyes on the twins, she was filled with emotions, and right there and then, Anakin leaned out his hand. He said to his former Padawan, "Ahsoka, when Leia reaches the right age, she'll need a master. Would you train her?" Ahsoka was stunned. She was honored, but she also knew what that meant. If she were to train Leia, she had to return to the Jedi and train her as a Jedi Knight. Ahsoka went deep into thought. She started to remember all the times when Anakin had her back thick and thin. During battle, through times she was down on herself, and even when she was expelled from the Order, he always had her back. After much thought, Ahsoka nodded and she accepted this offer. In that moment, nothing meant more to her than to help pass down everything that Anakin had taught her. The two hugged. Now it was time for Ahsoka to face the Jedi whom she had rejected for so long. As she returned to the temple, she herself had a meeting with the council and requested to rejoin the Order and to face the Jedi trials in hopes of becoming a knight. The council then discussed this in great lengths together and came to the conclusion that after spending this amount of time away from the Order, she wouldn't be ready to become a Jedi Knight yet. But that's when one Jedi Council member stepped in, Plo Koon. As Plo stood from his chair, he himself requested that until Ahsoka was ready to face the Jedi trials on her own, he would take her under his wing as his own Padawan and retrain her in the ways of the Jedi. The council accepted this. Ahsoka was now the Padawan to her oldest friend Plo Koon, and more importantly, she had now rejoined the Jedi Order. As the years passed, life couldn't be better for the Skywalkers. Padme was the new Supreme Chancellor, and Luke and Leia were getting older and were both trained by Anakin's closest friends. Obi-Wan was training Luke, and Ahsoka, who is finally now a Jedi Knight at this point, was training Leia. Not only that, but Windu and Anakin's relationship was better than ever. Although he granted Anakin the rank of master, he knew that he still struggled with darkness, so over the past years, he decided to teach him Vapad in order for him to balance both his light and dark side tendencies. Although it was a work in progress, Anakin was becoming stronger than he had ever become, and in the process, he even considered Windu to be sorta like a friend. After 10 years since Palpatine's death, everything felt right in the galaxy. At least, that's what they thought. Somehow, Maul had escaped.